String processing is very essential to know. They help in manipulating strings or even check for values. There are so many functions available for string processing. There is a function called dir in Python, which will give us the list of available functions or methods that can be used for a given type. So you can also use the dir function to check out the available functions within a library. We will look into it while learning about classes and modules. Now let us just check for int. So dir of int. So as you can see, the integer type has these many functions that we can use. So these are the methods that you can use for integers. So to check what a particular function does, you can use the help function. So when you give something like this, help of, say for example, let me check this bit length function. Mention help of, while mentioning you mention int dot bit length. So what this means that you are asking for an interpreter to look for the description of bit dot length inside the int class. So when using classes, we don't call them as functions. We refer to them as methods. So again, we will go into the details of this when learning about classes in Python. So for now, just know that this dot indicates that this particular method belongs to this class. You can see that we obtain the description of what the function does. So it says bit length. So this is the function, and this is the output type. So this function returns an integer as its output. What it does is that it represents the number of bits necessary to represent self in binary. That is, when you give a particular number, it converts it into binary and prints out how many characters are needed to represent this in binary. That is how many bits are needed. So the binary value of 37 is 100101. So we totally use 6 bits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bits to represent this in binary. So that is what this bit length function does. So it returns the number of bits necessary to represent a given number in binary. So as you can see, this notation means that this particular function returns an integer value as its output. So that is what we get over here. We get an integer number as the output. So similarly, let us check for strings now. Near str. So here is the list of all the methods that are available in within the string class. So you can see this list is huge. There are so many functions that are available. So if you need to check the description of a method, again you can use help. So let me choose a random method, or better, let us check for a method that we are already familiar with. So we already know what a string.format does, right? So we can just check the documentation of string.format and verify what they have given. So help string.format. So this is the description of string.format. So we call this description as a documentation string, or in short we refer them to as doc strings. So documentation is the reference document that developers use for learning and implementing a language. So these strings are part of the documentation and hence they are known as doc strings. So you can see that it states returns a formatted version of S. So S is your string. So we are using str, here they are using string, the variable as S. So s.format, you have your input values to the function, and the output that this function returns is a string. So it returns a formatted version of S using substitutions from these values, and these substitutions are identified by braces, the curly brackets, right? So in case if you are stuck with how to use a method or would like to know what it does, You can always find it out this way. And if you are using Jupyter Notebook, I showed you in the video explaining it that there is a convenient way to check for descriptions of inbuilt functions. That is, instead of using help, you can also use just a question mark directly. So this will generate you the docstring that you can easily view. But this only works in notebooks. Otherwise, you can just directly use help and get the description. So again, so in this list we have so many functions. So I said string functions are very important to learn, but I am not going to cover each and every one of this. I am just going to focus on the important ones among these list of functions. So first, here are two functions that we already know and are really familiar with. So one is the string.format, which we just saw. So it string formats the corresponding variables in their respective positions wherever we use these brackets. So this will give you the substitutions of the values in the corresponding positions. And next we have the string length. So length finds the length of the characters present in the string, and length is not just specific to string, it is applied to any collection. That is, it can be applied even to lists, dictionaries, sets, or even tuples. But here we are just using initially we are considering for strings. So let us look at some new functions that can be used. So we have a join function. This is the syntax string.join and sub. So string is this str, this is the string that you want to process. This function takes an input value sub and places the string in between each character of sub. So if you look at the description, it says returns a string with str placed in between every character of sub. So the str and sub are just variable notations. You need to use your own variables instead of these. So let's assume sample to be the string, and join inserts this sample string in between every character of this star. So this is the output we get. As you can see, this sample is inserted in between every character of the star. So between these two, the sample is inserted, and again between these two, the sample is inserted. So it doesn't have to be the same characters. So even if it is something like say add dollar, and not just special characters, it can be anything else. So between each of these characters, sample is placed. So if I run it, as you can see, this particular string is placed in between every character of this particular substring. As the string is inserted in between, so it has to have at least two characters. So otherwise join doesn't work. So if I just have one single character in the string, so you don't have any kind of joining happening, right? Now here are few functions that are based on searching in a string. So string.find takes three values: sub, start, and end. Again, these are just variable notations and not exact terminologies. This function gives the index of the first occurrence of sub, which is the string you would like to search for in the total string, and it searches between the start index and the end index. Note that here these variables in the function are given in square brackets. So it means that they are optional. The syntax states that this sub is mandatory, so you have to give this sub, that is compulsory, and anything within the square brackets is optional. So now even within this you have another square bracket, right? So this indicates that if you choose to give this part, since it's optional, but if you choose to give this part, even within that you have an option of mentioning whether you want to give this end or not. So of course you can always give all three values if required, but this is the meaning of what this syntax means. So let our example string be a variable a with the value. This is a sample string. Now if I use a.find t, that is what I am doing is I am checking whether this particular t is present in this a, and while I am doing, I am only searching between index 4 and index 22. I am only considering that portion of the string and checking whether this particular character is present in it. So when I run it, you get 18. So dot find gives you the index, right? So this 18 indicates that the first occurrence of t is present at position 18, at index 18. So remember that indexing starts from 0, so 18th index is actually the 19th position from the beginning. And find function returns a -1 in case the function is not found, or if the substring is not found. And as I mentioned moments ago, that the start and end indexes are optional, so you can skip out both, or you can skip out just the end string. So even if you skip them out, Python considers the start as the 0th index by default and the end as the last index. So here I am not mentioning both start and end, so just giving this will find the occurrence of this is throughout the string. And note, is is a continuous string, so it will check for this particular combination. So here we have a combination is that occurs at 0, 1 and 2. So we get the second index as the output for this question. And again, as I said, if then the substring is not found, -1 is returned. Say for example, a.find is and 7. So what I am doing here is I am checking for this is in a starting from the 7th index. So this gives -1 because this particular place is the 7th index, and after that till the end of the string there is no occurrence of this combination is. So we get a -1 as the result. Now what about this case? a.find t 4 and 18. So from the 4th index till the 18th index we search for t. It returns a -1. But note here, we knew that t exists at index 18, but here when we checked for t within that range, we got a -1 as the output. Can you think why this happens? The reason is this excluding, right? Just like in indexing or slicing that we saw, always the end index is excluded. So whatever you give in that particular value, say if you are giving n as the end index, all the processing happens up to n-1th index. So here what happens is, when I gave 18, it only checked until 17th index. So we got a -1 as the output. Had it been 19, then we would get the index because we include the 18th index also. So this is the find function. We also have a function called rfind, which is exactly same as find. So we have seen string.find. Now we have a function called string.rfind. So everything is same except that in the searching happens from the last. So r.find is actually short for reverse find. So what happens is that it gives the index of the last occurrence of sub between start index and end index. So string.find found the first occurrence. So it started from left to right and found the first occurrence. rfind starts from right to left and finds the first occurrence. That is, it starts in the travels in reverse direction. So that is the only difference between rfind and find. So everything else is same. Your return, if the substring is not found, it returns a -1, and by default if you don't mention your start and end positions or start and end indexes, it considers 0 and the length of string as start and end respectively. So if you know find, rfind does exactly the same thing, but only difference is that the searching happens backwards. Then we have the count function. So observe the syntax, it is quite similar to the find function, right? So again, if you forget or get confused, always use the help function to get the docstring of the inbuilt functions. So count function finds the number of times this sub has occurred from start index to end index. Again, the syntax means the same thing, where sub is compulsory, start and end can be optional. So whenever you encounter such syntax with optional inputs to the strings, to the string functions, the default of start and end will always be the 0th and the last indices respectively, and the end index is included. So this is standard for all string functions, so keep that in mind. If you don't mention start, it means it defaults to 0th index. If you don't mention end, it defaults to the last index. And yeah, so the find the number of times sub has occurred. So how many times this particular substring has occurred in your original string, that is what count function does. So say my string is hello world, I am checking for h.count of L. I didn't mention my start and end index, so the entire string is considered. So if I run, I get the output 3 because there are 3 instances or 3 occurrences of L in this particular string. So now just like previous cases, when you mention your start and end indexes, it only searches within that particular range. So within this 3 to 5th position, there is 1 occurrence of L, and then between 2 to 8 there are 2. So this is all the same thing. And again, it not only checks for single character, you can check for any number of characters, but when you do so, it checks for the exact combination of what is provided within these codes. So if I give this, there is an occurrence of LO over here, right? A combination of LO happens once in this particular string, so we get the output as 1. What about OL? There is O in this, there is L in this, but OL are not together, right? So this will give you a 0 because there are no occurrences. Next we have string.replace. So string.replace substitutes one substring with another in your original string. So if you mention the count, then that many occurrences are replaced. So let's look at an example. We have print of h which prints you hello world. H.replace L with AB. So what I am doing is basically I am replacing this instances of L with AB in the string. So wherever there is L, it will get replaced with AB. That is what replace function does. So here one L got replaced with AB, another L got replaced with AB. Again in world, this L got replaced with AB, right? Now when you mention a count, only that many instances are replaced. That is, here we are mentioning 2, right? So only 2 of those L's get replaced. There are totally 3, but since we mentioned 2, only 2 of the instances got replaced. So that is the role of count. So when count is specified, only that many occurrences are replaced. Next we have string partitioning. Partition in English means that you are dividing something, right? So string partitioning divides the strings into multiple parts. This is the syntax. You have your original string str and a substring as the input to this function. So if this sub is found in string str, it is split into 3 segments. So the first part is whatever string comes before the occurrence of the sub. The second part is the sub itself, and the third part is whatever comes after the sub. Okay, if it is not clear, I'll explain you with an example. Partition is one of the easy functions that you can remember. Say this is my sample string is the value stored in A. Now I want to segregate or divide this entire string based on this particular combination of characters. So when I give a.partition mpl, So the portion that is before this combination gets stored in the first value, then this gets stored as the second value, and whatever follows this particular combination is segmented again separately. So based on this particular combination, we have obtained three parts. One before the sub, two is the sub itself, and three is whatever part follows after the sub. Now if you want to access the individual values, you need to store these separated values into variables. So if you need to access the split values, you can assign the output to three different values or three different variables. Since we have three output values, we need three variables. By unpacking, the corresponding values get stored in the corresponding variables. You can check out the values and verify your outputs. So here you know the output of this is this is exactly what we did in the previous cell. So we have three values and I need three variables x, y and z to store those three values, store these three values. So here I have x as the first part, y as the second part, z as the third part. So string partition is very helpful in web scraping. When you collect data from web, you don't exactly get your string as you desire. So there will be some junk values mixed in them. So when you want to extract it, you can use partitioning to separate that particular segment alone. And when you assign it to some variables, you can access that particular value and do any kind of processing that you require. So now what if this particular substring is not present in the string, and how will partition take place at that time? So if the substring is not present, the entire value is stored in the first variable and the other two remain as empty strings. So this is the value of A, and I am partitioning using this combination MPEL. As you can see, we have AMPLE, but we don't have MPEL combination anywhere in this string. So in that case, you can see the entire string is stored in the first variable and the other two remain as empty strings. So this is how partitioning works in strings. And then we also have R partition or reverse partition. So just like how we had reverse find that started from backwards, reverse partition also does everything where the searching happens from the end. So it is same as string.partition. So we can just compare how both differ. So now here is the string hello world, and I'm partitioning based on the occurrence of O. So this is normal partition, so it will search from left to right, and here it encounters O. So it separates HELL in the first variable, then this O in the second variable, and everything that follows it to the third variable. So this is how normal partition works. Now reverse partition, what happens is it starts searching from the backwards. So you can see it started from backwards, and here the occurrence of O is detected. So the break happens at this particular point. So anything before this is stored in first, this particular value is stored in the second, and everything that follows after this O is stored in the third variable. So this is the difference between partition and reverse partition. And then there are certain functions called stripping functions. They remove the characters from the beginning and the end of the string. So let's assume this to be the example string. So string.strip removes the trailing sub, which is your value that you give to your function. Removes the trailing sub at the start and the end if sub is found in the string. What they mean is that, say this is the start of the string, right, and this is the end of the string. Now if sub is found in the start or in the end, it gets removed. That is what strip does. Strip basically removes or strips off a set of characters at the beginning and at the end. So here we have text dot strip dot. So when I run it, what happens is it will look whether this dot is present at the beginning and at the end of the text. or at the end of the variable. So as you can see, even though dot is present at the beginning, we have spaces in front, right? Since spaces are also characters, it doesn't recognize this dot. Instead, it just checks for this particular white spaces. So whatever character is there at first, it only identifies that particular character. Now had I given something like text.strip an empty character, in that case it sees that there is empty spaces in the front and in the big end, so it removes them off, it strips them off from the original string. Now even if I don't mention anything, that is if no sub is specified, it removes blank spaces by default. So even if I don't mention anything, by default it checks for blank spaces. But if I mention a character, it checks whether that character is present at the beginning and at the end. And if it is present, it removes them all from the original string. Now we have something called L strip, that is left strip. So it removes the trailing sub at the start. So what strip did is that it removed from both ends, right? But L strip will only remove from the first. Same way we have something called R strip, which removes the trailing sub at the end. So R strip removes the characters only from the end. So basically strip is a combination of both L strip and R strip. And one thing I would like to add is that strip function can be chained. That means you can give strip continuously over the text. Say for example here we ran this text.strip, right? Since we didn't mention anything in between, by default it checked for white spaces and removed these white spaces from this text. Now you can again use strip on this. Just give dot strip again. And if I give dot over here, now for this strip, this is the input, right? And that particular value is this particular string. So in this string, it will check for this particular character and strip it off if it is found. Okay, so first it strips off the white spaces, and this is the input for this strip function. So it checks for the dots. Since dots are found on both sides, it removes them off. So let me use that particular string as the input to demonstrate L strip and R strip. So when I gave text.strip, so this particular string is the output, and I'm storing that as a variable in text2. So now I'm using L strip on that. So this will check for white spaces. Since we don't have any white spaces, nothing is going to change. Now it is checking for dot. We have dots at the beginning. So as I said, L strip removes the characters at the beginning. So whatever dot is there at the beginning gets removed, and R strip removes everything at the back. So whatever is available at the back gets removed. So I'm using text2. So this is your text2, right? So whatever was at the back got removed. So this is how strip function works. So there are still many more functions. For now, for string processing, you can just learn about this. So it might sound like there was too much stuff in this, but actually we didn't cover much. We only saw like 3 or 4 functions, and there were variations within each. So all we did see was how to search, and then how to partition, and how to strip. So within this there are variations, and it is easy to remember. Even if you learn one, you can automatically deduce the other. Say for example, if you know find, you know how reverse find works. Similarly, if you know partition, you know how reverse partition works. And if you know strip, you can easily find out how a left strip and right strip works. So you can, if it sounds confusing, or if there was too much content, you can again rewatch the video and get cleared. The more you practice, you can just give your own examples and try out various functions, see how the values change, how the processing happens, how the values are affected. So when you practice more and look at more and more examples, then you will have a clear understanding of how each function works. And again, if you are stuck with something, you can always use the help function to find out how to use a particular function.
Quiz time, guys. You got a few minutes to think.
So now that we have learnt about so many string functions, it is a good thing to actually try them out so that they get registered in the mind. So the first question asks you to explore about string.index and how is it different from string.find. So there is a string function called string.index. You can check out its docstring. You can also find the docstring for string.find. Even without the docstring, you already know what it does, but still, if you want to be even more clear, you can check out the docstring and read it. Now I want you to find out what is the difference between string.index and string.find. First, what string.find did was it found the first occurrence of the given character in a string, and string.index also does the same thing. So just check out the documentation and find if you can note any difference between those two. And the second question, I have text, hello, I had a really good day today and I feel happy. So it is actually a 3-sentence string. Use a string function to print each sentence in a different line. So what I need to do is I have to print this hello in a different line. I need to print I had a really good day today in a different and I feel happy in a different line again. So you need to separate or segregate these three into different lines. So how do you do that? Using a string function. So read about all these string functions that we just covered and which you find suitable that can be used for this task. Try it out. There are more than one ways for each answer. Okay, as long as programming is concerned, there is never one particular solution. You can arrive at a solution with different ways. So you can refer and see what you think can be suited most to use in this case and try it out. And the next question, we have extract the animal names from the following phrase. So we need to extract cats and dogs from this particular phrase. So these are some 3 questions that might give you a good grasp about how to implement some of the string functions that we just saw. So you can take about I think around 5 minutes or yeah, I think 5 minutes should be good to finish these tasks. So try it out and let me know.
Time's up. Now evaluate yourself and keep listening.
So the first question asks us to find out about string.index and string.find. As I said, you can check out the documentation by typing help str.index. So we get this help method. And so to compare it with string.find, you can open that and keep 2. So we have the definitions of both string.index and string.find. So check out them. It returns the lowest index in S where substring sub is found, such that sub is contained within string of start to end. So check over here what it says for the definition of find. It returns the lowest index in S where substring sub is found, such that sub is contained within S start to end. So this definition is the same for both. An optional argument start and end are interpreted as in slice notation. So this is common for both, which means both index and find return the first occurrence of the given substring. But if you check over here, here is the difference. In index it raises value error when substring is not found. Find returns -1 on failure. So what they mean is that we saw if the substring is not found in the main string, it returned -1 for find. But in case of index, instead of returning any value, it throws or raises an error. So that is the difference between string.index and string.find. So here I will show you with an example. So this is my string A is hello world. So here I can use a.find, say L. So it checks for the first occurrence of L and prints the index of that particular position. If I use index, so I get the same output because both functionalities are same. Now what if I give a substring that is not found in the original string? Say a.find, I give something like this. So it returns a -1 indicating that this particular substring is not found in A. Now a.index, as you can see, it raises an error. So it shows an error message saying substring not found. So this is the difference between index and find. So they both do the same thing. The only difference occurs in how they interpret if a substring is not found. I hope the difference is clear. Okay, next see, here is a string containing multiple lines. Use a string function to print each sentence in a different line. So this is the text. So I told you that there is no exact right answer when it comes to programming. You can arrive at the output in various ways. There are multiple solutions for solving a problem. Same way, this particular task can be achieved in multiple ways. So first, what we need to do is you need to find a way such that you separate these particular elements. Let us go over all the functions that we have seen and see what can be applied to this or which is more suitable. So string searching, they only search for your index, so there is no need, we can't use this for manipulating strings, so we can skip string search and check about, okay, so we can skip string.find, you can skip string.rfind, you can skip string.count. All these just give you the indices or the count. And then what about string.replace? So it replaces old with new and returns the string. So there is some sort of manipulation happening in .replace. So do you think .replace can be used? The answer is yes. We can use string.replace to solve this. See, so we need to use a string function to print each sentence in a different line. So whenever you see this term in a different line or in a new line, the first thing that should come to your mind is your \n. So that is what your next line character is, right? And if you want to separate these into different lines, check for a common pattern. So how can you split it? We have a full stop after every sentence. Is it possible to replace this full stop with something so that it can split these particular sentences into multiple lines? So try it out. So text dot replace. What is syntax for replace? It is the old string and new string with optional count argument. So here there is no need for us to give count. So the old string or old character set that we can give is dot replace with #n. So do you think this will work? What I am basically doing is I am replacing this particular dot with your #n's. So if I run this, what do you think will happen? Whenever we have this /n, it is being pushed to the next line, right? That is the functionality of this escape sequence \n. So when I run it, so you get your output wherever we had dot, it has been replaced by /n. So I told you in interpreter, escape sequences are executed when we use within the print statement. So I just need to give this in print. So you can see whatever followed over here got pushed to the next line. So this is one way that you can use to segregate a single multi-line string into multiple lines. There are other ways too. So one is that if you know other string functions, which I recommend you learn in your free times, apart from whatever we are covering in this particular topic. I told you there are huge amount of string functions. I am only going to cover some of them. So you can learn the remaining in your free time whenever possible. So that will help you out really. So in case if you know about other string functions, there is a function called string.split. So it returns a list of words in S using sep as the delimiter string. So this sep is an input variable that we give to this function. Delimiter is what we call, like when delimiter is like a special character that is like a placeholder. So it is like you travel from one place to another and you encounter a particular position and it stops over there. So that is like a placeholder or like a fixed position reference. So what you can do is you can do text dot split and you need to give this separator, that is your character that where you want to split the entire string over. So when I run this, you can see wherever we had this dot, it got split up. So hello is now a separate entity. I had a really good day today as a separate entity, and I feel happy is another separate entity, right? So we have another new entity of empty string because there was a full stop at the end, so it got split over here too. So this portion got split up and whatever followed here is stored as the empty string. Or if you want, there is another way where you can split these up, that is by using the partition. But partitioning will involve multiple steps. So first it will be like A, B, C equal to text dot partition. So what we are doing here is, in this text, first I am splitting over this particular dot. So this hello is stored separately, this dot is stored separately, and rest of the string is stored in the third variable. Now we have the first string separately. Now within this, again if you use partition, so this gets separated and this part gets separated. So this way we can have three different parts. But the problem with this is we have to do it in multiple steps, but it is not impossible. So this is our first partition string, this is the middle string, and this is the last string. Then we can use the last string C and split it again using the dot. So C dot partition. Sorry, it's a spelling mistake. P-A-R-T-A. So now we have separated hello first. Now in this last string we have separated I had a really good day today and I feel happy. So we can just print these particular three values to give the separated segments. So as you can see, there are multiple ways to achieve your output. So you just need more practice to think of various possible outcomes. And what about the third one? Extract the animal names from the following phrase. So cats and dogs. Again, you can do it in multiple ways. One is using partition. So cats and dogs dot partition over your and. So this separates cats and dogs. So you can just take these two. You assign it to some values like ABC and take only A and C. You can get this. Or you can also do this. Use a string dot replace. You can replace the and again with a Hessian. So we have extracted the animal names. So this way you can try out multiple solutions and arrive at the output. And you can also use your ordinary string slicing to get these values. Here, this is your text. I can just give T of 0 to 4. So this will extract cats, and I can give T of or even simpler, you can directly try this. So what happens is here, so we have seen in slicing that index always begins with 0, right? So when you give a negative number, what it means is that it indicates the direction. So this 4 is the 4 characters and minus will start from the last. So minus 4 indicates the last 4 characters. So you can also do slicing this way. So as you can see, we saw about 3 different ways where we can extract this. Similarly, there are still many more ways, and you can do maybe probably 2 or 3 more ways that I know, and there may be even more which I don't know. So as I've been saying, there are multiple ways for multiple solutions. You will pick them up with more and more practice. So at this point, if you can't do all of these, don't worry. As long as you are able to complete with at least one particular method, then you are on the right track. Next, let us look at string functions involving cases, that is your upper or lower cases, or in common language what we refer to as the capital and small letters. So here are my example variables. Text1 consists of fully lowercase alphabets, text2 consists of uppercase alphabets, and then text3 is of mixed case. So these three are my values that I am storing in this text1, text2 and text3 variables. So I will be using these variables to demonstrate the following functions. The first is string.capitalize. So string.capitalize returns an output with the first character of the string into capital letter. So we know text1 is everything in small letters. So when I use dot capitalize, so you can see the first letter alone is converted into uppercase. Then we have string.lower. So it returns a string in lowercase. So text2 is everything in uppercase. So when I use dot lower function, it returns a string where everything is in small letters. So note that I keep saying it returns an output with values. I never said that this function converts the strings. So the difference is that when you use dot lower function or any of these functions for that matter, the actual string is not modified. We only get a copy and modifications are done on it. So if we use any of these functions, the original string remains the same. The changes are not reflected back on the original string. Instead, everything is only in a generated copy. So if we need to perform any changes in these strings, first make the changes and assign them to another variable, then use that particular variable thereafter whenever needed. So then we have string.upper. So it returns a string in uppercase. So text1 was your small case string. Use dot upper, so it returns a copy string where everything is converted into uppercase. And then we have string.title, so it returns a converted string in title case. So we refer to text like this as title case text, that is the first letter of every word is in capital, rest of the words are in small letters. So such case scenario is called as the title case. And we have something called the swap case. So it returns a string by interchanging upper and lower cases. So here if you look at text3, it consisted of mixed cases, right? So this was our text3. When you use dot swap case, what happens is all the upper cases get converted into lower case and all the lower cases get converted into upper cases. So the cases are interchanged. That is what swap case does. Then we have case fold function. So case folding is nothing but it ignores the cases. So for example, here hello.caseFold will return you in small letters, and then check out this string again hello.caseFold converts everything into small letter. Rather than saying that it returns a converted string, what actually happens is that the cases are ignored totally. So it doesn't matter whether it is upper or lower, it just ignores all cases, and it's more like standardizing the comparison. Then we have certain functions that check for some special conditions in strings. The output of these executions are in boolean. So if the condition is met, we get a true value, otherwise we get a false value in the output. So here let me use these four variables. You can see T1 is a random string that contains both alphabets and numbers. T2 contains only alphabets. T3 contains only numbers, and T4 contains alphabet, special characters and numbers. So these are four types of variables that I'll be using to execute the following character checking functions. So first is the string.isAlnum. So what it does is it checks for all characters in the string are alphanumeric or not. That is alphanumeric meaning only alphabets and numbers are permitted. So T1.isAlnum, so T1 has alphabets and numbers only, so it is true. What about T2? Again it has alphabets only, so it is included. And T3 it has numbers, so it will also work. And what about T4? It has alphabets, numbers and special characters, so it will give you false value. As I said, alphanumeric values accept only alphabets and numbers. We have special characters like at and dollar symbol, etc. So they do not belong in alphanumeric group. Hence isAlnum function returns a false value. Then check isAlpha. So these are our variables and their values. So isAlpha checks if all characters in the string are alphabets. So alphanumeric checked for both alphabets and numbers, whereas isAlpha checks only for the alphabets. So first one is false because it contains numbers, and second one is true because it contains only it is entirely consisting of only alphabets. Then we have isNumeric, where it checks if all characters in the strings are numbers. So alphanumeric checked for both alphabets and numbers, alpha checked only for alphabets, and isNumeric checks only for your numbers or digits. So out of these four, only this variable has entirely digits, so the output will be true only for this case, and for rest of them it will be false. So these are character checking. Now we'll use a new set of variables. See here, string.isUpper checks if all characters in the strings are in uppercase. So whether everything in the string is consisting only of capital letters, that is what isUpper checks. So s1.isUpper will be true. s2 is not s2 does not contain any capital letter, so it will give you false. And s3, again, even though it contains capital letters, look at the definition of string.isUpper. It checks if all the characters in the string are uppercase. So if it is entirely full of uppercase, then it will return a true value. So this will give us a false. And again, isLower is the opposite of isUpper. So just like how in isUpper it checked if all characters are capital letters, in isLower it checks if all the characters are small letters. So the only case where it will be true is in s2. Since s1 and s3 have capital letters, it will generate a false output. Then we have something called isTitle. So checks if the string is a title. So I just told you a title case is where you have only the first letter as capital and rest everything is in small letters. So such cases are called title cases. So isTitle checks for whether the given string is in title case or not. So first one is false, second one also will be false, and only the third one is in title case, so that will be true. Then we have two functions called string.startsWith and string.endsWith. So you can see pretty much all these function names are they have direct meanings, right? When you look at it, you can understand what it does. So what do you think string.startsWith and string.endsWith do? It's just as the name suggests, it checks if a string starts with a particular sub in the range start to end. So we have the particular substring, and we can provide the indexes, and again if you can notice, these are optional values. So string.startsWith checks if a string starts with the sub in this particular range. So for example, take the string hello dot starts with h. What will be the output? It will be true. And what about here, hello dot starts with e? The string does not start with e, so this will give you a false value. And now string hello dot starts with l. Usually it should give false value because it starts with h, but here we are mentioning the index. We are only asking it to consider the characters from the second index to fourth index. So 0, 1, 2. So this L is the second index. So it starts with L, hence this is going to be true. And our string.endsWith function is the opposite of this, where it checks whether a string ends with a particular character or particular group of characters. So again, ends with 0 is true, ends with L is false, and ends with L. Again we are changing the index from 0 to 3. So this is 0, 1, 2, and we will be excluding the end index, that is the third index, so we'll only consider till 2. So this particular portion ends with L, so this is going to give true output. And these ends with and starts with function are not restricted just to one characters. You can even check for a group of characters. Say string.ends with, let me give this entire portion LLO. It will still return true because this is the ending portion and this is exactly at the end of this particular string. So we have looked at the most commonly used string functions. So we have seen these many string functions. First we saw about string.format, which gives your corresponding substitutions in their respective places. Then length of string finds the number of characters in a given string, and string.join inserts this str into each and every character of, in between each and every character of this sub. Then we saw about string search functions, where string.find found the first occurrence of this sub in str in the start and end range, where start and end can be optional. And we had a function rfind, where it found the last occurrence, that is the first from last. So it is the opposite of find. So in find, searching happens from left to right. In rfind, searching happens from right to left. Then we saw about index function, which is the same as find, except find returns -1 if substring is not found. Index returns an error if substring is not found. And we also have, just like how we had reverse find, we also have reverse index, where the functionality is same as index but searching happens from backwards. Then we had a string.count function, which counts the number of occurrences of the sub string in this range. And then string.replace, it substitutes your old character set with the new character set, and if you provide count, it will only replace that many occurrences. So these were some of the string search functions that we saw. Then we checked string.partition, where a partition happened on sub, and whatever was to the left of sub is stored in one variable, whatever to the right of sub is stored in another variable. And we have rpartition or reverse partition, where the partition is done from the backside. Then we saw about strip functions, where they remove the trailing characters at the start and the end of a particular string. So strip removes from both start and end. L strip removes only from the start, and R strip removes only at the end. So these were the string functions that we checked earlier. And then later part we saw about case functions, which manipulated the upper and lower cases of strings. So capitalize the first letter, lower returns the lower case strings, upper returns everything in uppercase, title returns it in title case. In swap case, interchanges upper and lower cases, and case fold ignores cases. Case fold ignores your cases so that you can do caseless comparisons. And then we saw about character checking functions. Isalnum checks if the string is consisting only of alphabets and numbers. Isalpha checks if it consists only of alphabets. IsNumeric checks for whether only digits are present in a string. IsLower checks whether everything is in lower case. IsUpper checks whether entire string is in uppercase. Then we have isTitle that checks if the string is in title case. And also finally we saw about starts with and ends with function, where the string is checked whether it starts with sub or ends with sub in this particular range. So in all these functions, if you ignore the range, it by default means from start to end, that is from the 0th index till the length of the string.
Quiz time, guys. You got a few minutes to think.
So take up 3 questions. So the first one, enter a random string and check if the following conditions are met. So you have 3 set of conditions given, and you have to input a random string and check whether these conditions are met. Okay, just understand the question clearly. It says you to enter a random string and check whether these conditions are met. You don't have to give an input string already with the set of conditions. Okay, these are not the criteria for your input string. These are the criteria to check whether your input string matches these conditions. And in the second question, use an appropriate string function to make the following expressions true. So you have a set of you have a string variable on the left hand side and on the right hand side. So to make the following expression true, that you have your comparison or equality operator here. So to make it true, you have to use string functions such that this equality is maintained on both sides. That is, your left hand side and right hand side should be equal. And third one, consider the string hello. Can you think of a string function to print each character in a separate line? So if your input is hello, your output should be HELLO in separate lines. You can think of what functions you have to use out of these, whatever you have studied. Think which is more suitable and apply it. You can do by trial and error, that is not wrong. It will actually help you more with learning. So try it out and see if you can solve it. You can take up to 3 to 5 minutes to do these questions.
Time's up. Now evaluate yourself and keep listening.
For the first question, we first need to give an input string. Let it be so this is my input string. It is stored in A. So let us look at the first condition. It asks the string should not have more than 12 characters, and we have to check whether this particular condition is true or not. So what do you do when you want to check for the number of characters? You use your length function. So length of A, and if you want to find out if it is more than or less than, use less than. Since here it is asked the length should not be more than 12, so you have to use length less than or equal to 12. So it says that it is false. This is just your criteria condition checking. And what about the next one? The first character should be uppercase. So first, for that you need to get the first character, which is A of 0, which is your first case, and then check whether it is upper or not. Dot this. So it is true. In my everything is for my string, and depending upon the input that you have given, the answers may differ. The third one, middle 3 characters should be numbers. So again, how do you determine the middle 3 characters? If you remember in the last video we had found out, we did an exercise to swap the first half and the second half of a string, right? So what did we do over there? We first found out the length and found the middle part, right? So here the length of my string is 12. Sorry, I haven't found it yet, right? So this is the length of my string, it is 19. So to find out the middle three values, I need to first find the middle value. So a of length of a by 2, and we saw this returns a float, so we have to convert it to integer. So this is my middle character. It is better to store this in a separate variable. So we have the middle position, which is the 9th element. So 9th index is the middle index of my string. So the 10th and 8th indexes are the other surrounding indices. So together the 8, 9 and 10 are my middle three characters, right? So this middle three characters are numbers or not, that is what I need to find. So to do that, I can do this from 8 to 11. Note it starts from 8, 9, 10, 11 is excluded, right? Until 11, but 11 is excluded, so it will be 8, 9, 10, which are what basically my middle characters are. So these are my middle characters, and I need to check whether they are numbers or not. Dot is numeric. So this will give me whether the middle three characters are digits. You can do all this in a single line. So here we manually calculated the number and found its we sliced the string, but if you want to do it or keep it in generic way, you can just do this, right? N was the exact middle number, that was your length of the string divided by 2. So the previous character will be n minus 1, and if you need to check for the next character, it is going to be n plus 1. However, we know that this is excluded, right? So this will, we have to include one more, that will become n plus 2 and is numeric. So this way you can keep it in generic format instead of giving the exact values, so that you can fit in any kind of value for n depending upon the string that you input. Next, use an appropriate string function to make the following expressions true. So the first case we have hello equal to hello. So it gives you false because, as I said, capital H and small h are different. Capital K letters and small letters are considered as different characters in Python. So they have to be an exact case match to be the same alphabet. So to make them true, you can do either of the following. Hello. As you see, one side is full of uppercase and the other side is full of lowercase. So you need to convert one side case into other. You can do 2 lower equal to, sorry, it is just lower. Not lower equal to hello. So this will give you true because this dot lower will return a string which is consisting of lower characters of this particular string, right? So that and this can be equal, or alternatively you can do this too. You can convert this to upper, you can use dot upper to return a string with the capital values. So this too will work. And what about here? So if you observe the pattern, wherever we have capital letters in here, the corresponding values have small letters here, and wherever there are small letters, so those particular values alone are in capital letters. So if you catch the intuition, it is basically the cases are interchanged. So you just need to do swap case and get the corresponding values. Right? Or you can even do it on the other side. It doesn't matter, because anyhow the cases are going to be interchanged. So this way we can make these expressions hold true. Or there is also another alternative. So if you look at these particular case functions, we had something called string.caseFold. What string.caseFold did, it converted, as in like it returned the caseless comparison strings. So it changed everything into lower cases. So you can directly use that too. So here you can just use it on both sides. So what happens here is, even this is this hello.caseFold also returns small hello, and this hello.caseFold also returns small hello. So you can equate it both. Same way you can do it for the second question also. .caseFold. So again, you have multiple methods of arriving at the answers. So there is no one particular solution for any of these questions. And in the last one, consider the string hello. Can you think of a string function to print each character in a separate line? So as I said before in the previous quiz, whenever you encounter this in a separate line, new line or different line, the first thing that should come to your mind is your \n. So the thing is, to print each character in a separate line, we need to obtain something like this, right? HEL L and O. So we need to make sure that this /n comes in between each of the characters in this particular string. So do you remember something that we saw similar to this, where a particular character or particular set of characters were inserted in between some stuff? So if you remember, it was one of the very first functions that we saw. It is your string.join. So it returns a string placed in between every character of sub. So let's try that, what happens. So we need /n to be inserted between the other characters, and if you look at the documentation of join, we have s and iterable, and the string is returned, which is concatenation of strings in the iterable. So the separator between elements is s. So this s is the separator between each elements. So which means our s should be #n dot join, and here you can give your hello. So what happens is, in between each of these characters, this #n is inserted. So that is what happened over here, right? So when we gave sample.join, in between each of these characters, this particular string was placed. So that is exactly what happens here. So hash n is inserted between every character of hello. So if you run this, you get your output. So you can see your hash n is placed in between each and every character. And as I said, escape sequences are only seen when you use print. So you have to give everything inside a print statement. So you get your individual characters in separate lines. So I know in this particular topic we dealt with a lot of concepts. There are probably more than we can handle at this point. But once again, it is essential to know at least these many functions. So if you look at the documentation that I showed, if you look at the directory I showed, there are still so many functions that we skip through. So right now it is essential to know at least this much. So practice more, take some random string examples, try out, see what happens in various cases, what happens when you use this function in the first half of a string or maybe in the second half of a string, or what happens if you interchange your indexes, change your start and indices. So experiment with all these functions, and the more you do, the more you will understand and get clarity of what happens, what is the working mechanism of each function.